When you think of science in the 19th century, what usually comes to mind are some of the greatest inventors and scientists of all time, including Alexander Graham Bell, Marie Curie, Nikola Tesla, and many others. And we usually think of their discoveries and inventions, but what does not necessarily immediately come to mind is the 19th century's scientists' weird obsession with throwing and dropping cats and other animals. James Clerk Maxwell, for example, who would become arguably the greatest theoretical physicist of the 19th century, was reportedly well known for this very activity. However, he was not the only prominent scientist to be intrigued by this question of how cats, when falling from a height, seemingly were able to defy the laws of Newtonian physics and change motion in midair to land on their feet. At around the same time, a mathematician, George Stokes, was also interested in cat turning, which is the word used to describe the way in which a cat manages to fall on its feet. This was an issue that has been bothering scientists for a while, as it did not make sense seemingly. According to the laws of physics, to do that, the cat would need a surface to push itself off. It seems that without such surface, the rotation of the front part of the body should cause the rotation in the opposite direction for the hind side, which would result in the cat landing with its body twisted. At first, scientists tried to solve this problem by simply dropping the cat, but then the suspicion was that the cat manages to somehow bounce itself off the researcher's hands. So then the scientists became more creative and eventually developed this apparatus to suspend the cat using some cords. By the way, it's interesting how in these times it looks like scientists were very keen on building different apparatuses using suspension mechanism. For that, have a look at my other video in which I talk about a guy who suspended everything around him, including his own bed. But going back to our topic, they eventually managed to build this mechanism. But even then, of course, the cat still landed on its feet, so still managed to rotate itself, leading some to even conclude that cats somehow have the ability to bounce themselves off the air. So overall, the scientists and everybody around them were still very perplexed and fascinated with this issue and how cats managed to do that. But it was not until the end of the century that the solution to this problem began to emerge. Specifically in 1894, the Paris Academy of Scientists made this appeal for anyone to explain how cats always seem to land on their paws when falling from heights. And finally, a guy who brought about great breakthroughs is a physiologist, scientist, inventor, and chronophotographer by the name of Etienne-Jules Marey. And by the way, chronophotography is a photographic technique which captures a number of phases of movement. So this guy, he was quite a talented inventor. He really has loads of inventions to his name, but probably the most known one is a spheromograph, or whatever you pronounce it. An instrument basically that's used for recording graphically the features of the pulse and variations in blood pressure, something that is being used up to this day. But his other work was significant in the development of cardiology, physical instrumentation, aviation, cinematography, and like I said, many other things, many other fields. But of course, it is his skills in cinematography and photography and related skills that ultimately contributed to solving this mystery of how cats land on their feet. By the way, if you're enjoying learning about these weird and funny and sometimes mad scientific experiments, they're all described in this book, Mad Science. There's 100 experiments from the history of science. Some of them are absolutely mind-blowing. So I'll put the link to this book under this video. So Marey, this guy, he assembled a camera that was capable of taking 12 consecutive frames a second. And then he filmed the cat being dropped. So this is in fact his most famous film. You can watch it everywhere. You can watch it on YouTube. I'll try to put it on the screen as well. So he filmed the cat and finally debunked this idea that the cat manages to bounce itself off the researcher's hands or of the air. So basically he explained what exactly happens and where this rotation comes from. The findings from his study were published in Nature magazine in 1894, and you can read the original conclusion on your screen now. I won't attempt to read it, it's quite complex, but you can pause it if you want to give it a try. But in simple terms, what he concluded is that there are two stages to the cat's body's movement. First, what is being rotated is the forequarters, and secondly, the hindquarters. So essentially this enables the cat or the two parts of the body to push themselves off each other. I don't know, still don't know how it works, but that's what he concluded. But of course, as with any breakthroughs, any scientific discoveries, the scientific community and the academic community was still rather skeptical, at least some members of this community. Not everyone was convinced, so what followed was a long period of other experiments, but they really seemed to like and adopted the idea of dropping animals. So in their experiments, so this time they extended the sample to rabbits, guinea pigs, dogs, and of course still dropping cats. And the conclusion to this story came around 70 years later, after the original experiment, when there were more experiments. I think this time they were much more ethical and civilized, and eventually the scientific community accepted and adopted this explanation that this guy developed 70 years prior.